All right, I'm doing this so you can tell how much paper's in my hand. I'm looking at the paper in my hand. We've got issues, some stuff more of an issue than others, but there's some things, here and there that some on the college football streets are talking about as being a problem. But I do want to tell you, as much as I'm going to talk about some of those tonight, it is always refreshing when we get to go out on the road during the week this time of year and we get to go on various campi, plural of campus. If you could just be around that, if you could just be around summer workouts, if you could just watch guys in the weight room, you could just be on college campuses every day, you would probably have a lot of this remove itself from your mind. You just have yourself replenished with the vibe of what college football is supposed to be, which is what we try and do on the campus of Pate State. It is, what day is it? Thursday, May 15th, the year of our Lord 2025. So we're jam-packed. We're high atop a very weather-aware downtown Nashville, Tennessee. Don't sleep on the early morning threat tomorrow. Could have a midday threat, could have a late night threat. I may be on the road storm chasing tomorrow, whomst amongst us knows. But in the meantime, we've got a crisis, multiple crises facing the sport. But one of them is what time we kick these games off. And I don't know that we've ever led a show with something this simple. It seems so simple. The solution is right there in front of us. And yet, here we are, just butting heads over it. Noon kickoffs. Yes, I do have to discuss that with you. I put out my top 20 last week, ignorantly. And I don't ever rank teams on the show, and I found out why. So I got a lot of blowback on it. I will address it tonight. I heard a lot of the criticism, just like I heard, and I'm not making this quote up, somebody in the radio world labeled me a what was it? A Michigan bootlicker. Of all the phrases I thought would be thrown at me, Michigan bootlicker, never one of them. But I got accused. And it has to do with that NCAA investigation, that pesky little NCAA investigation. So I do have some things to say about that tonight. We've got bold predictions on the show tonight. We're jam-packed. And last show went like 77 minutes. So we want to go hurry up, no huddle tonight. Alexandria, Virginia is tuned in. Portland, Oregon tuned in. Livingston, Alabama. Bristol, Tennessee. Quick shop note. Tomorrow morning, which is Friday morning, if you're watching live, we will have a full, lengthy sit-down with Billy Napier on the channel. Monday, we will have a lengthy sit-down with Mario Cristobal on the channel. So the Pate State Speaker Series has not slowed down. I think we're 17 visits deep now. But that is just a little FYI for Friday or Monday. Now, as for matters at hand in this great sport of ours, I'm going to go ahead and pop the paper. We have a crisis on our hands. Now, look, as future college football commissioner, I need to address this. Jackson said, hey, guess what? Ohio State fans get the short straw again. Another matchup. Could be a huge night game at the Shoe versus Texas. It's going to get big nooned, which is a tough phrase that's entered the vernacular lately. He asked, are there any solutions for us to stop getting big nooned? I know why Fox is doing it, but man, it just sucks. You know, my long-standing personal feel on this has been I love noon kickoffs, but as future college football commissioner, I feel it's imperative that I remove my self-interests and replace it with the interests of the greater college football public. And this is one of those areas where I have found I have to divorce my own self-interest. I have to put it off to the side. And I have to admit, we've got a noon kickoff crisis in the sport. And if you're unfamiliar with how these media rights deals work and you're just a normal fan and you're wondering, why do we keep playing all our big games at noon if you're Ohio State? Look at this. Since the start of 2019, Ohio State has had 22 noon kickoffs. I think they had one home game in primetime last year, and it was Western Michigan. So none of their big games happen in primetime, and the fans are up there like, why is every other Alabama game or Georgia game or LSU game in primetime, like they sneeze and they put it in primetime? And we're up here, we're playing Texas in week 1, and we kick it off at noon. Some of these restaurants are still serving breakfast. They kick it off at noon. And I can guarantee you, 99.9% certainty, Oregon at Penn State in week 4, week 5, whenever that is, that'll get big nooned as well. And the reason, obviously, is because of the way media rights deals are structured in this sport. I'm not a huge fan of it per se, and I'll address it in a second. However, I used to not think this is a problem. I will be very, very honest with you. I've spoken selfishly, for lack of a better term, on the show for a long time about how I love noon kickoffs because we go on the road all the time. And it's a huge blessing to have a noon kickoff because then we get on a plane, come back to Nashville, and I get to be here that night. And I don't have to travel on Sunday morning because Sunday is our busiest day when we're putting the Sunday night show together. So it's always a personal pain, but that really doesn't matter when it comes to how this should be structured because I should be an afterthought. The fans at large should be what this revolves around. But as is the case so often in this sport, fans and players, what do we always say on this show? Big decisions are made in college football. Two of the last entities that are ever mentioned in the press release or the reports or whatnot are fans and players. And wouldn't you know it, fans and players are the last things on anyone's mind when they signed off on these media rights deals, aside from Ben Franklin. He was at the forefront. Benjamin Franklin always finds his way. Some would say former President Franklin. Some would say. Not all. He always finds his way into these conversations. What is special about Ben Franklin? I will never know. There's got to be something, though. Anyway, this is a real problem. And like 99 other problems in this sport, which we do have, everybody just runs to their corners. So anyone who works for a network is going to run to the corner of defending their network, which makes sense. I don't really blame those people for doing that. But should that be the motivation? I would ask this generically in college football, but I would specifically ask it about noon kickoffs. You got big games all over the place in the Big Ten. It's 1 or 1A. It's 1A or 1B, best conference in the country any given year. Premier matchups every week in that conference. And the premier matchup will always kick off at noon as long as the rights deal is structured like it is right now. Because Fox, I mean, I wouldn't say to their credit, but certainly not to criticize them, they just made a shrewd business decision a few years back, and they looked and they said, all the big games are in prime time. CBS at that time had the SEC game at 3:30, and ABC puts a game at 3:30. Noon is an afterthought. So Fox said, if we're going to have a big package of games, let's do something radical. Let's take it and let's put it at noon. And we'll build this big brand. What do we want to call it? Let's see, Big Noon Kickoff. And they've had great results. Great results. One of the most tired counter arguments in the whole fight back against Big Noon Kickoff thing from the Big Ten fan perspective is someone yelling in your face, well, you're still going to watch. Well, of course I'm still going to watch. What else am I going to do? Have you checked out what the alternative is to being a college football fan in the fall, especially if you love college football? You're going to watch. Hey, newsflash. You could have big 2 a.m. kickoff and then watch Ohio State, Texas. It's not whether they'll watch. It's, are they watching in spite of your kickoff window? Or are they watching because of your kickoff window? Or are they watching and let's try and serve them the best kickoff window? I would argue compartment 3 is the one that this all should revolve around, but it's not that simple. So I've never gone to the extent of blaming Fox because, truth be told, Fox probably did something no different than we would do if we were in Fox's situation. By we, I mean any of us who were put in a decision-making position. So if I were an executive at Fox, I probably would have done the same thing. If I were a broadcast team at Fox, I would defend my company for doing the same thing. I say that proactively because I know a lot of folks are going to go after Klatt in the comment section because he speaks out about this stuff all the time. And I don't blame him for it, but I would just say beyond that, okay, beyond any one person's take or any one network's take, just think about it holistically. Not what is it. We all know what it is. We all know how it's structured. Why does it have to be structured that way? We say this or ask this about so many things in college football. There's this big misunderstanding a lot of times when people complain about this or that in college athletics, and you got someone who walks in the room and they push their glasses up and they say, well, let me explain what it is. I don't need you to explain what it is. I would love you to explain why it is. But then they go, their why ends up being a what. And I don't need what. I want to know why. Like, why don't we start from scratch? Why don't we ask a basic question? What's in the best interest of college football? But there's a reason. I know the answer to the questions I'm asking. There's a reason. Because nobody's job is to ask what's in the best interest of college football. Nobody. The Big Ten commissioner's job is not to ask what's best for college football, nor is it the SEC commissioner's job, nor is it the president of Fox Sports or CBS Sports or ESPN. It's not their job. It shouldn't be their job because there already should be a very powerful voice in the room. Ideally, it would be a commissioner or some shape, form, or fashion person who is overseeing college football at large, and it's his job or her job to ask, what's in the best interest of college football? And every decision that has to do with the structure of this sport in an ideal world would flow through that office. But yet again, we find ourselves in a situation where there's the common sense thing, and the common sense thing would be there's no reason one of, if not the most powerful conferences in college football has all their premier matchup kicking off at noon Eastern. That's obvious. It's common sense, but college football is not commonsensical, and there's no one in the room asking what's best interest of college football. It's just, well, what's in the best interest of our conference or our network? How much money can we get out of this? Nobody said, what about the fans? They never do. They never do. That's the great drawback to the passion that college football fans have is people get to take it for granted. Commissioners get to take it for granted. University presidents get to take it for granted. Network executives get to take it for granted. And so if you're running a network, you know it really doesn't matter what window you put Texas, Ohio State in. People are going to watch. You know that. Now, it's obvious there are windows that they'd prefer it be in as fans, but you can put it on at 3 a.m. They're going to watch Texas, Ohio State. Texas, Ohio State would be one of the most watched programs of the year if you put it on at 4:30 in the morning. That doesn't mean it's in the best interest of college football to put it on at 4:30 in the morning. But no one was ever in the room when the entire structure, when the entire format was being negotiated, saying, what's in the best interest of college football? A college football media rights deal would really solve that. But we're in this world where that doesn't exist. We're in a world where every league has their own media rights deal because that's the way the landscape is structured right now. In my perfect world, like real talk for a second, if this thing right here is the college football commissioner's chair, I'm looking at it and I'm saying, first off, let's hit restart as soon as we can, however that works legally. Let's hit restart as soon as we can. Let's get to all the power brokers come to the table. And that means network executives. That means coaches, that means ADs, that means university presidents, that means commissioners, that means representatives from all parties, but you're going to sit down with me, and you guys can bid however much you want to bid. You can buy in however much you want to buy in to the college football rights deal, but that's what you're buying into. Fox, every one of them, CBS, ESPN, Amazon and Netflix, if you want to pull up, tell me how much you want to buy in, and that'll determine how much weight, how big your seat is at the table. But at that point, all I'd love to see, personally, is the erosion, sort of the erasure of the concept of a media rights deal that is exclusive one conference to one broadcast entity. That includes SEC, ESPN, that includes Fox, Big Ten, whatever the case is. I'd love to see it all erode, and I'd love to see all of them at the table, and I'd love to see week by week them get to draft their games based on how much weight they've bought into at the table. But here's the great catch that makes perfect sense to everyone in the room, which is why it'll never happen. I'm the one, my office is the one that will decide what time that game airs. You may have heard of this concept before. It's called the National Football League. There's a lot of fear out there, which is funny because I share a lot of the fear that too much of this sport is starting to look like the NFL, except the parts of the sport that should look like the NFL. It's the great catch in college football right now. If you'll notice, the parts of the sport that you'd just as soon not look like the Sunday game are quickly evolving into looking like the Sunday game, except for we have no clue how to structure the calendar properly. We'd love to take notes from the NFL on that front. We have no idea how to construct media rights deals properly. I'd love us to take cues from the NFL on that front, but nope, dirty, no. Let's just take some of the most valuable properties of the year and have you eat your bacon and eggs and then throw it in the trash and boom, game kicks off. Why? Well, that's just the way it is. It's just the way it is, which, if history shows us anything, means it's just the way it always has to be. Because no great change ever happens. Just whatever is has to be. Hashtag sad. I'm going to work on it, but I can't work on it until I get elected. They're watching us at Academy Sports and Outdoors. Which one? Maybe all of them. But Academy is the presenting partner of this show. That's what I know. And I have not, once again, I have not run all my opinions by them. I'm pretty sure they agree with what I just said. But they'll handle kickoff anytime. They're going to be open before any game, unless they do the thing where they kick it off at 3 a.m. I don't think most academies are open that late. But Jordan Brand, you can find it there. We've been running this for a little while now, so I just want to remind you because I think we're running out of gift cards. If you buy $50 or more worth of Jordan gear there, make sure that you save that receipt and you take a picture of it. And then I need you to do 3 things, and gift card is yours to cut part of that purchase price off. Hashtag AcademyXJordan. Tag me, Josh Pate CFP. Tag them at Academy. And voila. Just watch the results roll in. We appreciate Academy. Always have, always will. They did the thing in the building again where, you know, once people leave here for the day, they don't really care. And so we do a show up here at 7 o'clock Central, and the AC cuts off, and it doesn't matter how many complaints we write. Once they're out of the building, they don't have to deal with it. Classic management tactics, just classic. So you can't see it on podcast, but I got a fan every now and then. I'm just fanning right into the microphone. Colin loves when I do that. We had a lot of fallout when I short-sightedly released my top 20 post-spring rankings last week. I never do rankings. Those who have been around the show a long time know that. And I think probably those who watched the show last week and who have given me some feedback see, Colin, what I'm going to do for a second is I am going to hide, and I'm going to hide. Sorry, had to take some executive action in the live chat. So start the segment over here. Top 20 rankings may have been a terrible idea on my part. I got to be honest with you, I never do rankings. I do power ratings during the season. I let the model take care of it because I'm not interested in any criticism. I just want credit. But we got a lot of criticism from my post-spring rankings, which I have to admit to you, I put about an hour's worth of thought into. And it was largely just a gut thing. Again, these are things we don't prioritize. We don't value that on the show a whole lot. But I said, hey, what the heck? Let's just try it. Let's just see how it works. We're out of spring practice. I've been around a lot of these teams. I've watched a lot of them practice in spring. So let's just see how it goes. Let's see how it feels. Didn't feel good. So I released them. I think we did that on the Sunday show. Whew. We put Georgia at 11. I will obviously grant you I'm slightly, I guess I'm not low on Georgia. I just got a little bigger question mark in my head about Georgia than the rest of the public. I would pause and I would ask 2 things. Not saying this absolves Georgia. Like if Georgia goes on to start the season on fire, then this is incorrect or whatnot. But just think about the last infinity number of years in college football. At any point, if anyone correctly predicted the way the top 10 ends in December in May, how crazy would it have looked? Or an alternate way of putting that. What would you have thought if you turned on this channel May of 2024, and I had Indiana parked in the top 10. What would you have thought? Aside from yelling clickbait 37 times in 15 different languages, what would you have thought? So the point is, just because it doesn't look like it makes sense, or it doesn't look like everyone else's top 20, it doesn't necessarily mean it's wrong or unfounded. And at the very least, I would say, I've got reasons for thinking this stuff. It's not written in concrete. It's not etched in stone. I just look at a great talent roster that is short on proven production. That's what I looked at. I also look at the concept that if they don't rapidly improve their ground game, which they may, but if they don't rapidly improve their ground game, I don't think they have the skill set at quarterback to have a top 15 passing offense to offset that. So if they can run the ball effectively, that's a moot point. But see, I keep using the word if. It's just a question mark. Doesn't mean I knock you out of the top 25, but it does mean maybe I knock you down a little in post-spring language. Now, if we get into fall camp and we start getting great returns out of Georgia, well, then you just bump them right back up there. It's kind of a blind guess right now. But the other part of this is, and this is rankings 101, this is why I don't do it a whole lot. You put a team like Georgia that's a perennial powerhouse at 11, and immediately you got a lot of people yelling clickbait, which I don't even address that. It's just stupidity. Or you have people yelling, no way, like definitive terms, no way, no how. I always ask this. How much comparative analysis have you really done on these teams? At the very least, we sit in this office all day, and we do put every team up on the board. So like I am thinking about Georgia in comparative terms to other teams. But how much have you really compared Georgia's offensive line to Clemson's? How much have you really compared their secondary to Alabama? Like, really? I wouldn't do that if I didn't do this show. I'd be paying attention to my team and my team only in spring. And that's if you're paying attention in spring, period. So Georgia's too low. Well, compared to who? Compared to who? And in what way? Because the first thing you're going to do if you need to defend Georgia is you're going to go to the past. But you see what happened this time last year is I said things like I didn't think they were going to be able to run the ball all that effectively this year. I said I thought they'd lose 2 games in the regular season. Well, we got accused of clickbait or being Georgia haters. No, we were just right. We were just right. Well, Josh, a Kirby Smart team will never fall out of the top 50 rushing, much less in the 100s. But they did. Is it an anomaly? I hope so. Probably was, but it happened. You know, so it's not impossible for that stuff to happen. Ohio State's at number 8. So, of course, that was way too low. People thought that was way too low. You may be right. I may not even keep them there by the time fall camp rolls around. But it's largely the same thing as Georgia. Part of the, I guess, the tax you pay for being so good at recruiting and developing is you lose a lot of production to the NFL. You lose some of your depth to the transfer portal. So that's not necessarily something that bit Ohio State, but I'm speaking in general terms there. But replacing all those draft picks matters. You just don't get answers in spring. Replacing both coordinators, it matters. You don't get definitive answers in spring. So what I do with that is I say that team could be the best team in the country. But post-spring, I don't think that right now. I'm not going to do the whole if they had to play a game today because nobody ever plays a game in May. But I am going to say if I've got questions, I'm going to lean to the side of the question mark coming out of spring. So I put you at number 8, not the end of the world. And then I put Penn State all the way up at number 3. Guess why I put them up there? There's a familiar theme forming, and that is proven production. And it wasn't even a person. I had like a show. Someone sent me a clip of it. I can't remember what the show was. Someone sent me a clip. And ironically, the premise was I'm out of touch for having Penn State number 3. They said Penn State doesn't belong in the top 20. It's just drug use. You're just high. Like, what are you talking about? If you want to argue with me they don't belong in the top 5, okay, I disagree. But there's not really a big difference between 3 and 6. Penn State not in the top 20, it just goes back to this disease that people suffer when it comes to Penn State. Well, Penn State can't win a big game. You mean they can't beat, like, the best teams in the country? Well, Drew Aller, man, he sucks. No, he's about a B- to a B-level quarterback. It's not A or F. It's not 10 or trash. It's not all or nothing. There are 10 rungs on the ladder. Penn State's been like 7 or 8 for a long time, last year especially, and now they bring virtually all the good pieces back. They've got another year of experience at quarterback of a guy who probably hadn't played his best football yet. They went and replenished their wide receiver room like we hadn't seen them do in a while. They're going to be able to run the ball. They got 2,000-yard caliber backs if they were feature backs. They're good on the offensive line. They just signed Jim Knowles as defensive coordinator. They're good at all 3 levels there. Like, who's more proven than that? And coming out of spring now, we're talking about comparatively. Penn State, there's not a huge question mark on that team. They're tiny question marks. There are bigger question marks, relatively speaking, on some of these other teams. They'll play Ohio State eventually. And by the time they play Ohio State may be better than them. Ohio State likely will be favored against them. Ohio State would be favored against them if they played to start the season in all likelihood. But this is not the JP poll. If this was JP poll, I'd probably have Ohio State ahead of them. But this is just good old-fashioned rankings. I had Florida and Oklahoma pretty high. Now, I knew that would raise some eyebrows, which begs the question, did we do it for clickbait or did we just do it because that's what we think? Well, it's the latter. So Oklahoma was at number 10. Oklahoma, pretty simple. I believe the roster is one of the most underrated in the country because they were terrible last year record-wise, because their offense was a disaster. But I don't think the team was a disaster. I think what we're looking at here is a top 20, top 15 caliber defense that largely returns at that level. And I think that the quarterback offensive coordinator addition there, one and the same, they don't come from different places. They both came from the same place. I think it greatly enhances and rejuvenates their offensive firepower ability. And elsewhere, they're like 3 top 10 caliber classes baked into the roster. I just think they're really underrated. And so I don't care about last year because they addressed problems from last year. This is not some sport where you just hit the pause button in late December and then you hit play the next August. I don't believe in bowl momentum. I never believed in any of that. There's not carryover. Like, there are wild swings and fluctuations in results year to year all across the country in this sport. Just boggles my mind how everyone seems to get amnesia about this stuff. You watch the same thing I watch every fall. You watch this team look nothing like they looked last year, case by case, every fall. And yet come spring, so many people cannot divorce themselves from the last thing they saw last year as it relates to predicting this year. And that is an overwhelming sentiment. And that's why overwhelmingly the public loses when they try and bet on this stuff. And yet so many people just cling to it. It's crazy. Florida at 9. I think a huge defensive leap is incoming for them. A lot of the guys that they'll lean on the most have a ton of snaps under their belt. I was down at Florida the other day. I just asked Napier about Lagway. I have very, very little concern about him coming out of that conversation. I think he'll be fine. I think they'll be fine. I just think very highly of Florida. Also, I should note, nothing about me ranking Florida or Oklahoma top 10 is me projecting what the record will be. Because I think they got really tough schedules. They could both lose 4 games or more. First off, I could just be wrong about them. But even if I'm right about them, these are very tough schedules. These could be 3-4 loss teams, even if I'm right about the caliber of team they are. So you are not always what your record says you are in college football. Now, my more seasoned viewers who like to criticize will say, there he goes. He's already baking in an excuse, which I kind of am. I won't even try and dodge that allegation, and I already know it's coming. Bama at number 4. I knew people would think that's too high. It's an Ohio State vibe from last year with me. They got so many guys that could have left, either via the draft or via the portal, that are returning. Penn State's got that to a degree as well. That's why I got Penn State and Alabama really high. And I think once upon a time, I'm going to speak about Alabama in a weird way here, but follow me. I think once upon a time, when you had your Ohio States or your Georgias or Alabama under Saban, you just accepted that it doesn't matter how many question marks there are. They are so far above and beyond talent-wise the rest of the field that they'll more than make up for it. I don't believe that's the state of these rosters anymore. I think the tops of the trees, especially from a depth standpoint, has been shaved off to the point where, first off, Alabama's got a top 5 talent roster anyway, but even if they didn't, like Penn State probably doesn't have a top 5 talent roster, top 10 maybe. But when a bunch of that proven production returns, and then you look elsewhere, and you got a lot of question marks on a loaded roster talent-wise elsewhere, these days, I will give the lean to the more experienced and proven team. But Bama's not proven at quarterback, is the obvious follow-up to that. And then my follow-up back is, but I don't think they need elite quarterback play. In fact, I look at a number of areas of Alabama's team. If you could just promise me right now, they'll be solid at quarterback, they'll be solid at running back, and they'll have a nice, solid pass rush. Give me B-level play in those 3 compartments. That team could compete for a national title. Because elsewhere, I think they're insanely strong. So it's just a DeBoer's staff I'm really high on too. So that was the reason. It's post-spring. That's all it was. We put it together in like 45, 50 minutes. It's post-spring. It's not the end of the world. Shawnee, Oklahoma is tuned in. Phoenix, Arizona is tuned in. And I cannot believe it, but Camilla, Georgia is tuned in. Biggest bugs on the planet. Camilla, Georgia, Dawson, Georgia. We used to play baseball tournaments down there, and I'm making this up, but the fable kind of grew with time. We would come back from those tournaments, and we would tell the kids who didn't play sports in the summer, we would tell them that the bugs were so big in Dawson and Camilla that when you hit a fly ball, the size of the bugs would change the trajectory of the fly balls when the baseball hit them on the fly, which I'm not quite sure ever happened. but I'm also not quite sure it didn't almost happen. So there's a double negative in there somewhere, and it was all a lie to begin with. But good stories, good times. I'm pretty sure it's the hottest place on the planet, too, all things considered. Hey, we got a question about what we were talking about earlier. Let's go ahead and tackle this one. Mark from Jackson, Mississippi, he said, in the last few years, college football is looking more and more like the NFL. Now we might be adding OTAs. Is there a line that college football crosses over that the sport loses its identity and turns into a watered-down version of the NFL, or am I worrying too much? OTAs are organized team activities. It's what the NFL has. It's not like an official practice, but it's a period where your team is allowed to get together and have activities under coaching supervision, you know, kind of like T-shirts and shorts kind of stuff. NFL's done it for a long time. So he's saying that because there was a headline out of ACC Media Days where a committee met with the coaches, and one of the rules they're looking at possibly is adding in 6 potential OTA days. I think it was 6 that they can use if they want to. You don't have to use them. I was down at Miami yesterday. I talked to Mario Cristobal about that. He said, yeah, they presented it to us. I don't even know if I would use them, but it's nice to have the option to use them. So, Mark, I would say this. I get that you may be concerned that the Saturday game is taking on a little bit too much of a Sunday feel. I do get that. I've talked about that case by case myself on this show. So there are plenty of valid complaints to be had on this front, but this is not one of them. It's not one of them to the point where, have you ever even paid attention to practice structure in college football? Or put another way, Mark, if you didn't read that headline, would you ever even know this is happening? Which is good logic, and it applies across a broad expanse of college football complaints. I have to tell myself this a lot because I do a college football show year-round, so if I'm not careful, I'll go down these rabbit holes of complaints, and then I'll go back and listen to one of our shows, and I'll say, you make this stuff sound a lot worse than it is, man. If I was an agnostic fan and I came and listened to your show, I'd be turned off from this sport. We never want to do that because we got the greatest sport in the world. So sometimes I have to take a step back, and I have to ask myself what I would suggest you ask yourself about this. Do you really care how guys practice? Do you ever keep up with how guys practice? Is this ever something you really track? Like I'm on these campuses a lot. I'm watching player-led workouts. I go participate in some of them, not quite to the degree that those players do. So there's a little, drop off from production when I'm on the field. But it's fun to mix in with those guys sometimes. But point being, you don't even know they're happening. You don't even know they're happening. This is just kind of a headline that comes out, and then someone takes it and they plug it into another chain in a link of narrative that college football's selling out, going the way of the NFL. Hey, look, if it is, this is not the evidence. Like, this is not the smoking gun, Mark. Good advice, like I said, is how big is the crisis if you would have never known it was happening had someone not tapped you on the shoulder and told you? And a lot of that stuff happens in college football. A lot of it from NIL or the way the portal works, how much guys are getting paid now, how much an agent is involved. I'm not saying I love all this stuff or hate all this stuff. I'm saying a lot of people have had complaints about this. So just take the OTA headline, toss it up on top of the heat mark, and think about all of it, and then ask yourself, does Saturday still feel like Saturday in the fall? Because that's really the great barometer. So my answer is yes, Saturday still feels like Saturday in the fall. I am looking at B-roll right now. Colin's showing me Georgia B-roll. So let's say Tennessee's in town. There's Ohio State. Let's say Michigan's in town. And let's say it's midway through the third quarter and they're deadlocked at 17 and it's 4th and 1 on your own 38-yard line and they're opting to go for it. Clock's ticking down, huddle breaks, 5, 4, 3, crowds at full throat. Just pause right there. Is anybody thinking about whether Ohio State had OTA workouts? Is anybody thinking about how much the left tackle's making? You're not. So the point is, the game hasn't really been ruined at all. If that moment feels different, if that moment is ruined, then college football has ruined itself. But I think college football is extremely resilient. Like, it is extremely strong. It's the redwood. You could chop a redwood down, but you don't do it with 5 or 10 swings. You don't do it with 5,000 or 10,000 swings. It'd take a lot to chop down a redwood, all concentrated, all at one spot on that tree. And don't do it because you'll get arrested. But point being, it takes a lot to ruin college football. That's a byproduct of how great it is. And so, if Wake Forest has coaches on the field and guys in shorts and T-shirts in early July for a couple of days, I just don't think that is tantamount to us becoming NFL light. That's my take on that. I think it's worth popping a Zevia after that. We got to be careful. Because I ran upstairs pretty quick. I thought the cream soda would be all over me. And by the way, cream soda is proudly back on the show tonight. 0 sugar cream soda, might I add. Instead of 3 sips, just did 1 long sip tonight. Okay, what next? Bold prediction season, still upon us. Yes, it is. Bold predictions, it's a whole season on this show. What do you believe that's really bold, but you're brave enough to state publicly and risk shame and embarrassment if it falls flat on its face? Well, here are some of them. This one's creative. This is a good one. Good friend, DG in Houston, good friend, he said, at least 3 of these teams will be in the Final Four. And he puts LSU, Oklahoma, Ohio State, and Clemson. Ohio State has the first best odds to win it all. Clemson 7th, LSU 9th, Oklahoma 17th. Now, I'm going to put a 9.75 on this prediction. I think, Oklahoma's over-under win total 6.5. I'm a little higher on them. It's going to be hard for Oklahoma to make the playoff, even if I'm right about them, because their schedule's tough. But even if they all were to make it, and 3 of them have to make the playoff, by the way, even then you would still need bracket luck. What if 2 of them face off in a first round or second round? You've got to have all of them. You got to have all of them advance. So predicting the Final Four, predicting 75% of the Final Four is tough. So I'm putting 9.75 on that one. Next up, this one's not so bold. Daniel in Nashville, a fellow Nashvillian, he said Texas A&M has the best rushing attack in the SEC this year. Yeah, that's like a 7.5 for me. I think they may be the best rushing team in the SEC this year. They got 3 really good tailbacks. They've got a good offensive line coming back. They've got what I would say is a plenty complementary enough group of talent, just offense in general, but wide receiver. I'm thinking quarterback here. I'm thinking about how they don't have to do one thing. It's not imperative, that they do one thing. It's not like watching Notre Dame last year. Notre Dame's got to run the ball. They don't trust themselves to throw the ball. A&M, I think, will trust Marcel Reed. I think they trust their wide receiver unit. And because of that, I think the hallmark of their offense will still be the ground game. I think it's the overall identity of that team. And I think skill-wise, they're plenty good enough to where they may lead the league in that category. So I'm putting a 7.5 on that. I think it may end up being my prediction. In the SEC, if we predict that, I may actually think A&M's going to do that. Next up, here's one that's bold. It's in the 9s. We'll see what we put on it. We're going to Overland Park, Kansas here. Arizona State repeats as Big 12 champ. They make it to the national championship game. Oh, wow. Okay, so 9.25. They're number 2 in returning production. There are 9 Big 12 teams that are plus 1,300 or lower odds, I guess, or higher odds to win the conference. That just means, in typical fashion, the Big 12, like half of the teams have very comparable odds. It's just a crapshoot. Texas Tech and Arizona State and Kansas State all have the same odds to win it. Baylor and Utah it's almost a 5-way tie atop the Big 12 for best odds to win the conference. It's just crazy. Tightly compacted. So I disagree with that. I've already bet Arizona State. I do think that, I wouldn't say they're the runaway, but I do think they're the clear favorite in my eyes. But it's the Big 12, so anything can happen. However, to give you an idea of how compacted the Big 12 is, so I told you there are 9 teams that are plus 1,300 or better to win the conference. In the ACC, there are 5 teams plus 1,300 or better. So this is not normal. It's normal by Big 12 standards, but it's not normal anywhere else. I'm going to put a 9.25 on that because even if they make it, they still got to go to the national title game. Now, I do think there are 2 talent rosters in that league that if they get good and they're good enough to win the conference, they actually could make a run in this year's playoff field. Arizona State and Texas Tech are those two teams. Now, they may lose 6 games, but if they click, I actually do think on the high end they have the talent rosters to make it there. Unlikely, but not impossible. 9.25 on the boldness scale. And let's go to the land of Lincoln by way of Pennsylvania. This is Mike from State College. He said, it may be bold or not, but the win total is over under 7.5 for Illinois. I think they'll be a playoff team. I put an 8.5 on this. I don't think it's that crazy. It's a top 5 returning production team from a 10-win season last year. Now, just as sure as I say that, I talked to you 30 minutes ago about how this is not a carryover sport. You don't just get to carry all that over, but it's a sign that you're returning a lot of proven production, including your quarterback. But it's not a magazine. It's a sport. And the reason I say that is a lot of these teams, like Oregon is going to be there every year. Ohio State's going to be there every year. Penn State's going to be very competitive every year. Illinois has not been that. So Illinois entering the season with expectation is a rarity. I think it was Tom Fornelli, I heard talking about this the other day. He was just talking about the history of Illinois and the history of Illinois coming off a good season. It's not good. And it makes sense. You get a little complacency, you lose your way a little bit. No one ever predicts that's going to happen. So there's a chance that that's a non-issue, but there's also a chance it does creep in a little bit. Also, everyone circles you now. Like USC goes to Champaign in late September. They're aware of that game. In a normal world, USC is not circling Illinois, nor is Ohio State, but everybody knows to be careful against you this year, which means you get everyone's best shot. Maybe you still win, but it's a lot tougher. So that water gets a lot deeper when you've got expectations around you. I'm going to put an 8.5 on the boldness scale there. Oh, let's move merrily along. I should have told you that we've been working with Quick Trip. As you know, I have a wedding coming up. Quick Trip has agreed to involve themselves. And what that means, I can't be specific. I don't necessarily know that Quick Trip's looking to get into the wedding catering business. Maybe they are, but fun times. They had turnbuckle ad placement in the last WWE event, and then lo and behold, they pop up at what some are calling the wedding of the spring. Not my words, but somebody's words. I'm sure somewhere out there someone said that. So good for Quick Trip. And if you're not a pro wrestler or getting married this month, you can just go get gas at Quick Trip. You can get some cold brew on tap. You can go get some trail mix with or without raisins, get some nice crackers and get you a protein shake or a slice of pizza and get on your way. But you know what? You're purchasing it from friends. That's what you need to know. Friends of the program at Quick Trip. We continue. Okay, so I put this a little deeper in the show tonight because I get tired of leading the show with this. Colin, let me take a little chug of water here for just a second. We want to hydrate for this kind of segment. So, you know as well as I do, the college football playoff is about to change. Or we think we know that, right? Because every other headline every day is about that. And you know that all the higher-ups, the high-level mustaches, the suits and whatnot, they've been meeting about what they're going to do in 2026 and how many teams are going to be in the playoff. Are there going to be automatic qualifier spots? Is it just going to be straight seeding? Just blah, 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 yada, yada, yada. All this has been going on. We've been talking about it on this show, too. And it sounds like things aren't clearing up. In fact, it sounds like they're getting messier by the day. You know when you're starting to descend, if you're about to land, normally you go through clouds. But what do you usually know? You usually know we're going to go through clouds, 10,000 feet, 8,000 feet, 5,000. But about the time you get to 5,000 feet, whoosh, you come through the clouds. And then you can see the ground. And then you hear the landing gear deploy, and then you land, and you're good to go. But we're not coming out of the clouds. We've been in them for a while. And I'm starting to think that it's just foggy everywhere, and we may not end up landing this thing. So Ross Dellinger doing a really good job covering this, and he just put out one of several articles he's written lately on yahoosports.com the other day. I'm not going to read you the whole thing. You can go read it if you want to. There's not really that big an update, except he's trying to say this thing's not figured out, and it's not getting figured out right now. I've got a paragraph on the screen right now. This is just an example of the body of the article. I'm going to read it for you. It's just out of context, taking a little clip from it. The fight, it appears, is getting messy. Negotiations among the 4 power conference commissioners, they've started meeting separately from the other leaders, have produced disagreement. Discord lingers over the amount of automatic qualifiers designated for each conference. So not surprisingly, the SEC and the Big Ten want guarantees, and no one else wants to give it to them. The ACC just had their spring meetings. It will not shock you to learn there was zero support on Amelia Island for the SEC and the Big Ten to have guaranteed anything. The coaches didn't like it. The athletic directors didn't like it. Again, this is not breaking news. It's just that I guess a lot of folks kind of assumed, well, the more we get down the road, the more they'll come to compromise, or the big boys may get their way, or they may resolve this and they may trade that, and it's just not happening. And there's no commissioner at large. There's no college football commissioner in the room to say, you guys better get this done or I'm getting it done for you. And so we have this. So everyone's wondering when this playoff drama will get itself figured out. When will we get the new playoff format figured out? And I'm going to ask you a question on tonight's show that I asked a year ago. Who says it will get figured out? Who says it will? What are you talking about, Josh? It's got to get figured out. Who says it has to get figured out? So this is not a new theme on this show. I'm going to take you back to a year ago when, believe it or not, this same topic was being discussed on this same show, and I said something then that I'm going to reiterate in just a few seconds. Roll it, Colin.
How will all this get sorted out? People want to know. Maybe it won't. Maybe we'll come to an impasse. Maybe it doesn't get decided by the deadline. Maybe the SEC and the Big Ten look you across the table and say the 2 most important words that I think they're trying to get to all the while, and that is, we tried. We tried.
I've been a big believer during this whole process that the SEC and the Big Ten, unlike other institutions out there, have had one guiding North Star, and that is eventually they want to get to a world that looks like the NFC and the AFC, or the NFL model. Only in college football terms, it would be SEC, Big Ten. And however you get to that's however you get to that. It's no different than a GPS. I'm in Nashville right now. If I want to get to Albuquerque and I type in Albuquerque, New Mexico, it's going to offer me 5 different routes. And I could zigzag my way there, but I know the direction I'm headed is generally west, and generally I'm going towards Albuquerque because that's where I'm going to end up. And I feel like this process has been the same thing. You get so far down in the weeds. You put the magnifying glass on the story, and there's new details and new breaking reports and anonymous source this and league officials say that. But if you just zoom it out, think about this for a second. If they were headed that direction, how would they do anything different than they've already done? They expanded their conferences, which was the trigger point for this whole thing. Make no mistake, the entire premise of the SEC and the Big Ten having the audacity to even assume everyone would go along with them getting added beneficial seats at a table is they think they've earned it or deserve it because they're disproportionately more powerful than everyone else, which they can reasonably claim because they went and swallowed up Texas and Oklahoma. They went and swallowed up Oregon and USC. There are very few primetime player college football brands out there that don't have an SEC or a Big Ten helmet sticker. Notre Dame's one, Clemson's one, but there aren't many out there anymore. So it all started, the trigger point, the flashpoint was conference realignment. Then you get a little bit further down the road, 100 or 200 breaking news stories later, we're trying to restructure the playoff. And I'm telling you, if I were them and I wanted to get to the end goal of NFC, AFC, Big Ten, SEC rules the world, this is how I'd do it. I would muddy the water enough. I would put out unrealistic, unreasonable proposals that I know my peers will not go along with because my goal is not for them to accept my proposal. If they're stupid enough to, good. If they're desperate enough to, good. We win either way. But my real goal is to have them call my bluff so that I can throw my hands up and say, we tried, so that I can go do what I really wanted to do. And what I really want to do is sign off with any of a number of major brands that are ready to buy the media rights deals to the SEC and the Big Ten just doing their own thing. Because it's in the best interest of college football? No. But again, there's no one in the room that's looking out for the best interest of college football. And so, until you get that, this could be the trajectory that we remain on. The evergreen issue here is everybody's points are valid. That's the evergreen issue. That's why you're not going to have resolution in this, or it's hard to imagine. Unless someone completely caves, it's hard to imagine the ACC ever saying, okay, that's fine, take all your automatic qualifier spots. Or the Big 12 saying that. It's just hard to imagine it. If they do, they do. But if they do, that means they totally caved, and the SEC and the Big 10 won anyway. But see, here's the thing about it. As much as it sounds like I'm trashing the power two there, well, that's because I sit behind a microphone and I love the sport. I don't love two conferences. But if I were Tony Petiti or if I were Greg Sankey, my job's to answer to my university presidents. Those are my bosses, by the way. And my bosses have told me, acquire as much power and influence as you possibly can. Make this conference as profitable as you possibly can. It's how we fund all of this. Do you know what Auburn University is minus Auburn football? Do you know what Purdue is minus Purdue football, for that matter, or Michigan State or LSU? So all of this stuff operates based on athletic revenue. Make it as profitable as possible. You don't have a college football commissioner you have to answer to, by the way. So you can go do whatever you want to. It's really crazy, but that's the reality. And so, if I were them, I do either one of two things. I do what they're telling me to do, or I get fired and they find someone else who will. So if I were Greg Sankey or if I were Tony Petiti, I can't definitively say I wouldn't do the same thing. My point is, at the very least, they sit at the table and they say, hold up. We're playing the toughest schedules in the country. We're bringing in the most money in the country. 90% of the best teams are in our conferences anyway. You're balking at us demanding the bare minimum? We ought to just take it all. At least we're offering you something. That's literally their attitude. So they think they have logic-based reasoning behind that. And then on the other side, if you're the ACC commissioner, you're looking at it and saying, you have completely pillaged and plundered everything about this sport. If you're the Big 12 commissioner, you're saying the same thing. And the last little bastion of opportunity we have is the playoff, and now you want to swallow up all the seats at the table there? Absolutely not. That's also logical. You see my point there. Every bit of it's logical. Now, you, if you're watching or listening, you certainly have a point of view, and you hate the other side. You hate their point of view. But I'm just watching it, and I'm thinking there's no way we're going to get resolution because everyone thinks they're right. And unlike other sports and other places out there where there's a lot on the line, there's no gavel. There's no judge that ultimately rules on this. It's just kind of Tears for Fears mode. Everybody wants to rule the world. And that's where we are right now. So playoff headlines still to come. Resolution nowhere in sight. Can't wait to see how that turns out. I need to address something else. We're kind of putting this in the back half of the show, but I need to address something else. It's about Michigan. I can't believe this happened. I cannot believe this happened. So Max in Dexter, Michigan said, I see you and Joel Klatt backtracking on your Michigan takes. Is it time to apologize on air, or are you still holding out hope they get off? I don't hope anything about Michigan. Never have. I haven't backtracked on Michigan. I can't vouch for Klatt. I don't know what he said, but I haven't backtracked on Michigan. I got something, though. So somebody DM'd me a video the other day, and I'll tell you what all this means in a second. I'll tell you exactly what I think about Michigan and the NCAA stuff and what's going to happen. I'll tell you what I think about all that again. But I got sent a clip. I normally don't play clips from other people's shows on ours, but there is a guy by the name of Mike Valenti. I don't know him. I've never met him. I think he does a radio show. He was talking about this the other day. And I just want to play you a clip from it, and I will try my best to explain my point of view on the other side.
People who have told you from the start there is nothing to see here, There are no penalties. Only people who care are Buckeyes and Spartans. All of a sudden now, these same people on a national level, well, I expect a vacating of wins. That was from noted Michigan bootlicker Josh Pate. Then the ultimate Dinder Mifflin, dull-ass Joel Klatt today. Oh, something big is coming. Wait, Joel, you spent the last 2 years telling us it was nothing. It was, in fact, a nothing burger.
I laughed for 10 minutes when I watched that earlier today. I'm telling you, if we play bingo, if you just made me bet my salary on things I won't be called in a given year, I would have bet multiple years' salaries on me not getting called a Michigan bootlicker. I just never saw it coming. It came out of left field. It slapped me in the face, and I laughed. I can't even be mad at it. So Mike Valenti, I don't know him. I cannot even be mad at it. He has no clue what he's talking about, but at least as it relates to me. But I take it he doesn't watch his show. People who talk the most about this show usually watch the least amount of it. So he has no clue what he's talking about. But that's okay. He's not the first nor the last to suffer from that illness. The thing that happens a lot with this sort of thing is someone, like I'll have an opinion on something. And then somebody will clip 15% of it and put it on the internet. And someone like that dude who doesn't watch the show sees that 15% and then accepts it as 100%, and then they run with it, and then the bonus is they victimize you of clickbaiting, even though you're not the one who posted the 15% out of context clip on the internet to begin with. That's a nice bonus when that happens. So what he's referring to there is I said what I said about Michigan the other day. I said what I thought would and wouldn't happen to him. And I also was talking about it in the context of what I thought was and wasn't real hardcore punishment. So some of the disagreements I've had with people is some of you think vacating wins is major punishment. I don't. Philosophically, I've just never thought that. So anyway, I went on the show the other day and I said, I do not think that the way the media rights deals are structured today is such that the NCAA is going to be allowed to take big punitive measures against a school that depreciates their value as an asset. Because I think there's too much money at stake from the media rights perspective. And to understand how that all works, to be very clear, I'm not saying Michigan won't get punished. I've never said that. I dare you to find me any evidence of me saying they're not going to get punished. What I said is, I think they're going to get punished in a way that doesn't affect their value in the future. And I don't think vacating wins removes their value in the future. And I don't think issuing show causes to coaches does that. It hurts, but it doesn't torpedo their value in the future. You could give show causes huge fines. I think that will happen. I think a lot of punishment will be handed down. It's just that none of the punishment will be such that people are less likely to watch a Michigan game in the future. If you put a multi-year postseason ban on them, that means that the audience dwindles a little bit. Well, Josh, no, because they did that in the past and people still watched. Dude, first off, media rights deals were constructed very differently. Far less zeros in the past than there are now. And nowadays, you got to understand what's happening here. With the billions that are on the line, those billions are paid because you got some guaranteed draw assets. Ohio State's won, Oregon's won, Penn State's won, Michigan's won. Everything else is great, but you paid for those four. If you bought into Big Ten media rights, you're paying money that is ultimately going to the universities via the presidents. The presidents give the NCAA their power. The NCAA exists to do the bidding of university presidents. That's the way the entire thing is set up. So if you think for a second that the university presidents that signed off on media rights deals, taking in billions in exchange for these assets having a certain agreed upon amount of value, are going to let some nickel and dime operation of enforcement like the NCAA issue punishment in the way of a postseason ban that devalues the value of Michigan because less people are likely to watch their games. It is my opinion you're kidding yourself. That's been my opinion. So anyway, I said that on the show the other night. And some guy comes at me and says, you don't think anything will happen to them? Well, how about this? How about we bet on whether or not they'll have a postseason ban? And I said, no. But then another guy said, all right, how about, we bet on whether they'll vacate wins? And I said, I do think they'll probably vacate wins. I would never bet that. Why would I bet that? I think that is a possible punishment. Well, guys like this took that and said, well, look, he's backtracking. I'm not backtracking. I've always thought that's a possibility. I just don't care. I'm telling you that I don't think they'll swing a hammer that hits Michigan in the shins or in the knees. I think they'll swing one that hits them like in the small of the back or, on the side of the arm. And it hurts, but they can still run. They're still fine. Then, when you say that, you will have a third voice that will come in the room, and they'll say, this is pathetic. You're advocating for it being totally fine for teams to just cheat and get away with it. I'm not advocating for it at all. Michigan's facing multiple level 1 violations. If we were in a world where what should happen happened, they would have a multi-year postseason ban because they're facing multiple level 1 infractions. And so by the letter of the law, that should happen. I'm not enforcing based on my specific moral stance and how I view the world. I am talking based on what I think will actually happen. And what I think will actually happen is they'll have to pay a lot of money and some coaches won't be able to work anymore. Don't know if that'll be Sharon Moore or not, but I think that will be handed down. Maybe they'll even have to vacate wins, and you can care about that if you want to. I don't, because I saw the past happen, so it doesn't really matter to me, but that's your prerogative. I just don't think they're going to have a multi-year postseason ban. That's what I don't think. So there's no backtracking, because I've thought that from the beginning, and I still think that. So to be clear, that's where I am on that. No backtracking. I hate to disappoint. No backtracking. FanDuel does not have odds on that, I'm told. You cannot bet on the NCAA punishment of Michigan. That wouldn't be nice. But you can go bet on Michigan to win the Big Ten this year if you want. You can bet on them to win the national title if you want. That's fair game. And you can do it at FanDuel because they are the exclusive betting partner of this show. They have been. They continue to be. We appreciate them. We're happy to have them on board. A lot of fun markets to look at over there. Even if nothing more than to just pass the time, there's a lot of fun things you can look at over there. And I strongly encourage you to do it. All right, last thing, I wanted to get to one more batch of bold predictions. We've been doubling up on these in these shows, and I've liked it. Would continue. Bold predictions, what do you believe? What do you believe that you will go public with? Got one here. It's bold. I will grant you, it's bold. Ohio State, with a whole new coaching staff, will have 4 losses this year. That's Austin in Sheboygan, Wisconsin. Rough weather up there tonight, I'm told. Austin, you made a critical mistake. You did not tell me if you just mean the regular season or not. If you're telling me Ohio State loses 4 games in the regular season, that's a 10. That would be a 10. But, if you're just telling me they'll lose 4 games, do you realize Ohio State can make the national championship game and have that happen? If you just think about it, let's say they go 10-2 in the regular season. One of the losses is to Texas, and let's say they got 1 conference loss, which means they probably go to the Big Ten championship game. So they're 10-2, they go there, they lose. They're 10-3, but they're good enough to get in the playoff. Then they go on a run like they did last year, but they lose in the national championship game. Well, that means that they're, 13-4? They're a 4-loss team, but they also won 13 games. So it's a 9.25. Still bold. It's a 9.25, but they lost 2 games in the regular season last year. Like, all that lost production to the draft, it's not the craziest thing in the world, but since you didn't specify regular season, I don't know, man. It's crazy to think with the way college football is structured now, you could play in the national title game and be a 4-loss team. Crazy to think about. Next up, now this one's fun. Mike from Florence, Alabama. Jackson Arnold will lead the SEC in touchdown passes. I put an 8.25 on this. Shockingly, I think this can happen. Now, I also think he could flame out. It's a very, very big risk-reward proposition there at Auburn this year. Now, we look the last 4 or 5 years, the average of the quarterback that leads the SEC in touchdown passes is 39 touchdown passes. That's where you got to be. Bryce Young had 47. Quinn Ewers led it last year with 31. So somewhere in that 30 to 50 range, that's where you're going to land. Jackson Arnold had 12 last year. That's misleading, of course, because he got benched and Oklahoma was terrible, and now he's transferred to Auburn. Auburn was 28th in pass yards per game last year, and now they lost their leading rusher, which means they probably throw the ball a little more this year. They've got one of the sneaky best wide receiver rooms in the country. He'll need to throw the ball a lot. This could happen. This really could happen. So I'm only going to put like let's say 8.25 on it. That's what I'm putting. Next up, this is really specific. Chris from South Bend. All the schools that hosted a playoff game last season will host one again this year. So that's Texas, Ohio State, Penn State, Notre Dame. Those are the 4 teams that host a playoff game. And you got 3 first-year starting quarterbacks there that have to get the job done. Notre Dame, also, because they're one of them, Notre Dame needs to be number 5, 6, 7, or 8. They've got to finish exactly there. Well, 1 through 8, I guess. So there's a lot that has to specifically happen there. I'm going to put a 9.75 on that one. That's just it. They're all good teams. But again, you're counting on 4 things to specifically happen. That's tough. And the last one, this is bold. This is going to be a 9.5 as well. Abilene, Texas checking in. Sawyer Robertson becomes Baylor's 2nd Heisman winner, and he leads Baylor to a bye in the playoffs, which means they win the Big 12. So you got the Heisman winner, and they win the Big 12. I put a 9.5 on this, but strangely, neither would shock me if they happen. That's too bold. I'm going to leave 9.5. I already said it, but they're correlated. If he wins the Heisman, it's probably because they won the Big 12, obviously. So Baylor's got good odds. They got about as good odds as anybody else to win the Big 12. Sawyer Robertson is set up to succeed. 3,000-yard passing guy last year, 28-8 touchdown to INT ratio. They've got a thing happening at Baylor right now where the guy who would be their number 1 receiver is waiting to hear on eligibility. Some really weird thing where the NCAA, they ruled that he was eligible for another year, so he didn't go out for the draft. Now they've come back in and said, never mind, he's not eligible. Baylor's fighting it. Who in the world knows how that's going to work out? Is Baylor going to have enough national spotlight on them? Robert Griffin III ended up having enough on him there. So Sawyer Robertson, there's some obstacles to overcome. You also need like Arch Manning to not be great, or like Julian Sayin to not be great, because they make it tough for the quarterback at Baylor to win it all. I'm gonna put a 9.5 on it though. So if that hits, Chalice of Supremacy headed to Abilene, Texas. I'm headed home because we have done a good night's work here. We appreciate it so much. We'll be back same time Sunday night. The entire crew here, Director Colin, we appreciate you guys. Have a great start to your weekend, and God bless.